introduce myself. My name's Kim Roberts and I'm from Henry. It's a real delight to be speaking at today's event. It's just been such a stimulating and ideas-provoking morning so far. A little bit about Henry. We're a national charity and we've been working for the last 10 years to transform traditional approaches to obesity prevention. It's always good to focus on obesity in the run-up to the lunch moment. You'll probably think differently about what you're putting on your plates after the next 40 minutes. And in the earlier sessions about health, embedding health in all policies, we've heard a lot about a best start in life. And at Henry, we're totally passionate about getting children off to the best start in life. And I think it'd be fair to say that we're pretty determined as well. And over the next 40 minutes or so, what I want to do is tell you the story of how we've been doing that, about the approach that we've developed over the last 10 years, and what we've learned about what works. So to start with a little bit about where Henry came from, it was founded, as I said, 10 years ago by two people, Professor Mary Rudolph, who was Professor of Child Health and Consultant Paediatrician at Leeds at that time, and by Candida Hunt, whose background was in parenting, family support, behaviour change. And Mary was something of an expert in child growth and saw a lot of obese children in her paediatric clinics in Leeds. And really through that experience, she came to believe that if action to tackle child obesity was going to be effective, it needed to start much earlier on. And she was commissioned by the then Department of Health to do a review of the international evidence around the factors associated with child obesity, and to develop a framework for action for tackling child obesity through the Healthy Child Programme in the early years. And this is the framework for action that Mary developed based on the international evidence, which is available on the Henry website if you would like to have a look at it. So let's think about what those factors are that are associated with child obesity. So to start with, practitioner effectiveness, and I'm going to be talking more about each of these in my presentation. A healthy family lifestyle, because children are born into families, into a family environment, and so the quality of the parent-child relationship, the healthiness of the family lifestyle is going to have a huge impact on how healthily children eat, how active they are, and on their emotional well-being. And then finally, what the international evidence showed overwhelmingly was that action needs to start right at the beginning, because it's much easier to establish healthy habits and food preferences at the start of life. I think it's worth just pausing and thinking about the importance of those, we've often used this expression now, the first 1,000 days, so this period between conception and a child's third birthday. And this is Professor Sir Ian Kennedy and his Getting It Right for Children and Young People, just reminding us that if we're thinking about investing in policies to support health and overcome health inequalities, that this is the crucial period when we can make a real difference. And thinking about, why is this period, why are these 1,000 days so important? I mentioned a moment ago that habits are formed early on, and if you're anything like me, you would probably agree that it's really hard to break habits once they are established. So we want to get things off on a healthy trajectory rather than try and turn things around later. The start of life is a window of opportunity. It's a moment of hope for the vast majority of parents. new life coming into the world. So it's a time when parents are receptive to support. They really want to get things right for their new baby or their young child. And on a practical level, it's also a time where parents have more contact with health professionals than they do at other points in their child's life. So there's that opportunity. The data, which I think many people here today will be familiar with from the National Child Measurement Programme, is really sobering. It's quite shocking. I mean, I find that I become so used to these statistics that I almost have stopped really thinking about just how shocking it is that almost 1 in 4 children in this country are already overweight or obese by the time they start school. And that early overweight and obesity puts those children at risk of numerous lifelong physical and emotional health problems. And crucially, once established, obesity is extremely difficult to reverse. So let's have a look at what happens to 2 children who start school at age 5 obese. And this is data taken from PHE's longitudinal study that they did last year, tracking a cohort of children through the National Child Measurement Programme to see what happened to them between reception and year 6. And what is evident is that the odds are heavily stacked against children if they are already obese by the time they start school. Only 1 in 20 will be a healthy weight when they leave primary school. But conversely, if children start school a healthy weight, 75% will remain a healthy weight through primary school and still be a healthy weight at age 11. And that increases their chances dramatically of remaining a healthy weight in adult life. But actually, it's even earlier than that. This is data taken from the Health Survey for England in 2015, which looked at the obesity rates before the National Child Measurement Programme. So we may be very concerned about these 5-year-olds, but actually the Health Survey for England found that obesity rates amongst 2 to 4-year-olds are similar to those among 5-year-olds starting school. So 11% of children are already obese between the ages of 2 and 4, which suggests that we need to really bring our focus. If we're thinking about prevention, we really need to bring our focus forward. We can't even start at 2 because clearly weight gain is happening earlier than that. And if we're thinking about how early, then we need to think about pregnancy as the foundation of a child's life. There's been a huge growth in epigenetic research over the last few years, which has really taught us a lot about how the quality of the womb environment affects future mental and physical health in terms of switching on, switching off genes at an early stage in a child's life. We know too that eating habits start in the womb, and so what the mother is eating during pregnancy is already shaping her future child's food preferences. And we also know that excessive weight gain in pregnancy is linked to high birth weight, which is a risk factor for child obesity. So we can see just how important these first 1,000 days starting at conception are. And it's no exaggeration to say that the early years last a lifetime. And so what we've been doing at Henry is really looking at these very powerful messages from research and thinking about, okay, so across these early years, which are the points at which we need to intervene and support if we are going to create that healthy trajectory for babies and children and provide that best start in life. So, and I'll be talking about these moments as we go through the presentation, but thinking about pregnancy, breastfeeding, the moment when children start eating solid foods, the family environment, that crucial parent-child relationship, and the wider family lifestyle. And as we've been hearing this morning, any approach to tackling a wicked issue like obesity needs to be whole systems. There isn't one cause of obesity, so we need to be thinking about the systems around a baby or young child. And at Henry, we're focusing very much on individual, family, community level interventions. And of course, around the outside of this ecological model, you can put the political environment, the food environment, and other influences on the obesogenic environment. So, as I mentioned earlier, children are born into families, and their lifestyle will be shaped by their environment. And so we need to be thinking about parents as the agents of change, and we need to be supporting parents and providing the quality of support to them that will give them the confidence and the knowledge to provide a healthy start. So we're looking at support for families, but we're also looking at equipping the people around the family, the people who have contact, the people who families turn to, so health professionals, early years practitioners, equipping them with the skills, the knowledge, the confidence to really make every contact count, to make the most of every opportunity. And then we're thinking about the communities that children grow up in, helping those communities to be a place where healthy choices are easier choices rather than really challenging choices to make, and where there's a focus on activity. So let's bring ourselves down to earth at this point. It sounds great. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense, but I think all of us involved in public health know that it really isn't very easy. It might be simple, but it's not easy. And I think these words from a health visitor who came on one of the Henry training programs, I sit there giving her advice, and I know she's not going to follow any of it. And this was her describing her work with the mother of an obese 3-year-old. I think it reminds us that it is challenging, and when we're working to support children to have a healthy start, we're talking about parental behaviour change, effectively. And we need to be really, really sort of thoughtful and proactive about how we work with parents to support them to make the kinds of changes that will be in their children's best interests. So I'm going to just pause in what I'm saying, and I would like you to do a bit of talking to each other for a moment. I'm going to suggest that we split the room into two, and that half of the room, let's imagine there's a line up the middle. And in that half of the room, if you would like to talk to your neighbour, you might need to shuffle close to somebody if there's a gap the other side of you. I'd like you to think of a time when somebody's urged you to change the way that you do something. Perhaps something about your lifestyle or about your parenting if you're a parent. But actually you're not sure you can, or even whether you want to. And just talk to your partner about, how did you feel, and what did you do as a result of that urging? And then this half of the room, I would like you to similarly find a neighbour just to talk to, and think of a time when you've been trying to do something and someone's criticised you. And again, think about how did you feel and what did you do as a result? Just really quick, I'm just two or 3 minutes. If you would like to. That half of the room, urged to change. This half of the room, criticised. Okay. Well, I can tell by the level of conversation in the room that that those two topics sparked lots of feelings and memories. So I wonder if we can manage to do this without the microphones. I'm just interested in a few words, really. Starting with the side of the room over there, could people just sort of call out a few of the feelings that you remembered of when you're being urged to change, but you're not sure you can or whether you even want to?
Well, resentment. How about that?
Resentment, yeah. Yeah? Defensive?
Lack of understanding.
So you feel like you haven't been understood? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah, okay. So resentment, defensive, feeling like we haven't been understood. What did you feel like doing? Or what did you do?
The complete opposite.
The complete opposite. So you went into resistance. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's hear from this half of the room. So when you were criticised, when you were trying to do something, how did you feel? Awful.
Angry.
Angry? Sorry? Inadequate, yeah. Judged. Okay. Yeah, okay. And what did you do, or what did you feel like doing?
Stop doing the positive behaviour I was doing.
Okay, so we've got the resistance. Yeah, same resistance. Okay, thank you. So, I mean, what we're seeing here is that when we, however well-meaning our encouragement to change and our advice about leading a healthy lifestyle is, that if we start with those, helpful messages, that advice, those key lifestyle messages, and urge people to change without really starting with where they're at, the feelings and the behaviour are quite similar to how we feel when we're criticised. It wasn't an encouraging experience, it sounds like, that side of the room, when you were urged to change. But you weren't sure that you could or even wanted to. So when we do that, when we plough in with our very important messages, we're unlikely to have the impact that we would hope to. So let's think about if we want to actually do why most of us are working in public health, we want to create the conditions for change. Let's think about what we will need to do rather than just provide information and encouragement to apply it. So where we've put our focus in the Henry approach is really thinking about the two things that go hand in hand for change and for a healthy start in life. So one half is the messages, what we know about what's good for children and will help them grow up a healthy weight and flourishing in many other ways too. And then what do we need to do to enable parents to apply those messages? So the messages, which I will be talking a little bit more about in the moment, no surprises here, breastfeeding, parenting skills, healthy family routines, what a healthy diet for the whole family, play, physical activity, sleep, and emotional well-being. So that's what we know is good for children. But how are we going to make it happen in practice? How are we going to work with parents so that they're able to do those things? Because it's parents who need to provide those things for children. So we're looking at relationships, where all effective work starts, and crucially building relationships based on trust and respect. I think we had in the feelings that you shared after that short activity, you talked about feeling not understood and judged And so we need to actually get alongside people and really work in partnership. Partnership is one of those words that we all talk about. But what do we really mean? What really enables us to work in partnership? What really helps us to get alongside families so that they do feel understood, that they don't feel judged? And I think that for me, the catalyst is empathy. I have a bit of a watchword, which is empathy before education. From my own work with families over many years, I've learned that when I feel I'm not getting anywhere, that sort of blue in the face feeling that, you know, I'm saying, you know, really important stuff, but I can tell that it's not landing. That's a real sign to me that I need to stop talking and start listening. And it's when parents, when we provide that quality of empathy and listening and really focusing on families, that we provide that crucial experience of understanding that I believe, and our experience in Henry testifies to this, it's that sort of unlocks people's confidence and motivation, that they can then start thinking about their situation. And the other big advantage of really listening and getting alongside families is that we start to notice what's going well, that might not be immediately obvious when we meet a family. And that gives us something to build on, because families need to feel confident that they can make change, as well as motivated. And thinking about solutions, what's already going well in the family that we can build on, and helping parents think about small steps. The families that we work with often say that one of the most useful things they got out of the Henry programme was just being supported to come up with small, manageable steps that were their own goals. It was their own sort of thoughts and ideas for how they could put those goals into practice and achieve them. And that really shifts parents who come on the Henry programme from this sort of I can't to a much more fruitful how can I, and really helps parents I think harness their own resources. So we have a 2-day training for health and early years practitioners, which is all about what I've just been talking about, really thinking about how do we build parents' confidence and motivation for change. What are the qualities of the relationship and our practice? What are the skills? And then also, what is the knowledge? What knowledge do practitioners need? And evaluation of this brief Henry training is very promising. We've trained over 12,000 practitioners, and longitudinal evaluation has found that over 90% are still using the skills and the approach, the attitudes, over 12 months later. And when those practitioners who'd done Henry training up to 5 years earlier were asked about, you know, what was it that made most impact, what had most impact on your practice, the things that they cited most often was empathy, and a reminder to focus on parenting skills, because when we're talking about a healthy start and obesity prevention, we can tend to focus very much on what are children eating and what are they doing, and forget that parenting skills will underpin those eating and activity habits within the family. Evaluation has also shown an impact of that brief Henry training on not just professional practice, but on the policy and practice within children's centres. These are results that were published in the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics that found that the training crucially had a positive change on practitioners' lifestyles as well, which is really important in terms of thinking about being convincing role models. It increased confidence to discuss lifestyle issues, to bring up those sensitive conversations about weight with families. Children's centres started looking at what they were doing themselves and were introducing healthier snacks, meals, portion sizes. And they also talked about, children's centre managers also talked about how the training had supported the team and team working so that there was a more positive, collaborative, supportive working within the team. So I've talked about professional practice and our training for practitioners. What I'd like to move on to now are the different ways that we support families and the interventions that we've developed to at the different stages of a child's life. And let's start with pregnancy, because we know that that's the foundation for the child's life. And how can we support parents during pregnancy? Obviously, their own emotional and physical well-being in pregnancy is going to play a huge part. And we know that stress and diet in pregnancy have a direct impact on the growing fetus. But crucially, we can also use this as an opportunity to support parents to think ahead. Pregnancies for many parents or parents-to-be is a time of nest building, planning, getting the baby's bedroom ready. So what we're doing with our Henry intervention in pregnancy is really trying to extend the concept of nest building to what sort of lifestyle do you want your baby to come into, not just what colour do you want the bedroom to be, but which is part, I'm not putting that down, that's part of the fun and the pleasure of planning for a new life, but really thinking about, what sort of home environment do you want them to grow up in, what sort of lifestyle, and then thinking about the changes that parents need to make in pregnancy before the baby's born in order to provide that lifestyle, because the weeks and months after the birth of a baby aren't the best time to be making lifestyle changes. So really starting to think about, for parents, making those changes before the birth so that they're then able to provide that environment and modelling. And then really helping parents think about and understand early brain development and the importance of responding to the infant's needs after birth. Because so much that happens is experience dependent, that an infant's brain is only 25% formed at birth, and by the age of 3, it's 70 to 80%. So there's a huge amount of development that happens in those first couple of years, and it is experience dependent, so really thinking again about that quality of parent-child interaction. And then helping parents think ahead to when their baby's born, how are they going to feed them, and providing that sort of early promotion of breastfeeding. And then after the baby's born, we need to get in there right at the beginning to support early feeding. So where Henry's commissioned, we provide infant feeding service, which is about supporting breastfeeding, but also supporting optimal bottle feeding. We need to be contacting parents as soon as possible after the birth, because those first 2 weeks are critical in terms of establishing successful breastfeeding. By 6 weeks in this country, only half of mothers are still breastfeeding, and by 6 months only 1% of babies in this country are still exclusively breastfeeding, which is the World Health recommendation. We know also that, we're very well aware of the benefits of breastfeeding. We also know that it's protective against obesity. So increasing breastfeeding rates is integral to obesity prevention. And when we talk to mothers, the reasons that often people give up breastfeeding, even if they've wanted to, and the majority of people who don't breastfeed do say that they would have liked to, or they would have liked to at least partially breastfeed. And mothers talk about, pain, difficulty latching on, worry that the baby isn't getting enough. And so these are all things that if we get in there right at the beginning, in those first few days after the birth, that we can really support and make a difference. But not all parents choose to breastfeed, and some don't manage to do it even when they want to. So we also need to be really thinking about bottle feeding and helping parents understand the importance of responsive feeding following their baby's sense of fullness, which is much more challenging for parents who are bottle feeding than breastfeeding, because the parent's in control rather than the baby. The parent can see how much the baby's had. They've put in to the bottle what the tin said the baby should be having. So it's much more likely that the parent will try and keep on feeding, encouraging the baby to take more, even though they've clearly had enough. So really encouraging parents to be guided by early their baby's appetite, which is really crucial for later appetite regulation. If parents override their baby's sense of fullness, eventually children will stop noticing what their body's telling them about being full, and they're much more likely to overeat in later life. And then thinking about the next sort of moment where we can really intervene and make a difference is that transition from a milk-based diet to starting solids. This is my proud grandmother moment. This is my granddaughter starting her own taste journey. So we see the start of introducing solids as a real opportunity to establish healthy food preferences and eating habits. It's an opportunity to develop a baby's palate. But a lot of parents are focused on getting the food in and filling their baby up. So what we are encouraging parents to do is really think about the early weeks and months of introducing solids as this taste journey, that most of a baby's nutritional needs between 6 to 8 months are still being met through milk. So it's an opportunity to familiarise the baby with a wide range of different tastes and textures. And babies have an inbuilt preference for familiar. And the only way that something can be familiar is if they taste it, and they taste it a few times. And so when we're working with parents around starting solids, and we do this as a group, a one-off group workshop, or we do it through a one-to-one intervention that can be delivered universally by health visitors, it's really helping parents to think about, well, when your baby screws up their face and spits out the broccoli that you're offering them, it doesn't mean they don't like it. It's their way of saying, ooh, this is new. And to keep going. Most babies will be accepting a new food fairly happily by the 5th, 6th, 7th go. We also are encouraging parents to start with savoury rather than sweet tastes, and establishing a liking for those before introducing fruit. How am I doing for time? Okay. I talked about responsive feeding earlier on, and again, this is really crucial at this moment of starting solids. A lot of us, I don't know how many people in the room, were told to finish up, eat what's on your plate when you were children, and that's a habit that dies hard for many adults feeding their own children, but really, really trusting that when their child throws the food on the floor or pushes the plate away or clamps their mouth shut, it does mean they've had enough, and that we're helping them when we respect those cues. So a little bit about the Henry Healthy Families Group Programme, which we're running across the country in about 40 local authorities at the moment, generally in children's centres. It can be delivered on a group or a one-to-one basis. It lasts over 8 weeks. And there's over 5,000 parents have done the programme, and what we find is it's really popular. Our average retention nationally is 83%, because the programme is very interactive, experiential. Parents, it's not unusual for parents to say, oh, I thought it'd be like going back to school, and they're often feeling very anxious because it's about eating and lifestyle. But what they find is that the experience of being on the programme really does build their confidence, because we're modelling of all of the partnership ethos that I talked about earlier. And what are we focusing on the programme? No surprise, probably by now, parenting is the building block, because parents need the tools to hold those boundaries around screen time, snacks, activity. If they haven't got the parenting skills, the strategies, the confidence to do that, then however much they know they should and however much they want to, they won't be able to as effectively. And they also need to be able to develop those really warm, loving relationships with their children that are going to build their child's emotional well-being going forward. So that ability to balance that warmth, that love, with that ability to stay in charge as an adult and hold boundaries where it's important to do so, is often referred to as an authoritative parenting style. There's been some interesting work done looking at how the parenting styles that psychologists back in the 70s and 80s developed, how those map to feeding styles and how they also affect rates of child obesity. So these are the three of the four parenting styles, and two of these have been linked with increased rates of obesity. So firstly, the dictatorial style, and let's just see how that might play out at snack time. Here's some carrot, eat up. So no choice. And what we see is that when parents insist, it's a bit like us, isn't it? You know, when somebody tells us what to do, we don't want to do it. And the children who have grown up with parents who've had very restrictive attitudes to feeding are more likely to rebel when they get the chance, when they get to those teenage years. They'll make a beeline for all the forbidden fruits. And let's think, the other parenting style that's also associated with obesity is, no surprise here, the indulgent style. So what would you like for your snack, darling? And we can probably imagine what the child might reply. But what does it look like? What's that balance of, some choice for the child, but in charge as an adult, this authoritative one? So we might provide a choice between healthy alternatives. Here's some carrot and tomato for your snack. You choose. Meal times, again, thinking about the family routines. The research shows that family meal times are protective against child obesity. Sitting together with no distractions, sociable, chatting, encouraging, and crucially, parents modelling eating healthy food with their children and showing that they enjoy it, because children copy what we do, not what we say. The emotional dimension of food, because food is used by parents for all sorts of reasons that aren't to do with nutrition or hunger, particularly reward or comfort, and it's those is wrongly termed treat foods, but unhelpfully termed treat foods. They're often the foods that parents are using for reward, bribes, comfort. I think, I certainly haven't heard a parent in a supermarket say to their child, "You've been so helpful while we've been shopping, I'm going to get you a carrot to eat on the way home." So we know that if parents are using food in that way, it's likely to be the energy-dense foods. So we're helping parents think about how they praise and reward their children and find non-food ways of doing that. And thinking about those messages are embedding lifelong attitudes to food. If we build chocolate and sweets and ice cream as this treat, that's what we're embedding as a lifelong attitude. Or if we turn to food for comfort, that's what children are growing up with. And then we're obviously thinking too about what children actually eat. So we're looking at healthy balance, we're looking at child-sized portions. I'm whizzing a bit here because I want to cover quite a bit yet. Parents are often very surprised by child-sized portions. It's not unusual for parents to come and say, "I'm really worried that my child's not eating enough," because they always leave food on their plate. And then when they see just how small a child-sized portion is, they realise that they are eating enough. And we're talking about reducing energy-dense foods and increasing fruit and veg consumption. And then the other side of the energy in, energy out equation, activity. And there are very clear guidelines around how much activity is good for young children and for us as adults. So we're helping families think about how they can model an active lifestyle, how they can build activity into daily life, that it's not about going to do sort of pre-planned activities. It might be sometimes, but it's really about daily life, because all the young children I've been around, if they're not stopped, they're naturally active. So it's helping parents think about how they can sort of enable that natural urge to activity rather than children losing it as they grow older. So I'd like now to share with you some of the evaluation of impact of the Henry programme. These results have been published in Paediatric Obesity. So this is the Dumka, Parental Self-Agency Scale, and because we believe that parenting efficacy is a precursor to being able to make healthy lifestyle changes, this is particularly encouraging that we're seeing statistically significant improvements in parents' confidence in their role and their ability to set limits. We're also seeing changes in family eating behaviour. This is the Golan scale, and lower scores indicate desired behaviours. So again, we're seeing statistically significant improvements in meal times, children eating with adults, parents modelling healthy behaviour to their children, which is maintained at follow-up. And then those sorts of routines, the parenting confidence, the mealtime routines, resulted in some really encouraging changes to what adults and children are actually eating. So we're seeing statistically significant improvements in the amount of fresh fruit and vegetables that parents are eating, water, and a corresponding decrease in those energy-dense foods and drinks, maintained at follow-up, and a very similar picture with children, those again, more fruit, vegetables, and fewer cakes and biscuits. One of the most well-known public health messages is the 5 a day, and I think this is a good way of illustrating some of the changes that families make on the Henry programme. So at the beginning, children in families starting the programme eat, about 21% of them are eating 5 fruit and veg a day, which is about the national average for children in this country. And by the end of the programme, that's increased, almost doubled to 41%. Thinking back to our ecological model and the community, we have models of volunteering in local communities, which include breastfeeding peer supporters, parent champions, Healthy Start mentors, and outreach volunteers. Just say a little bit briefly about these, and before I finish. The parent champions are all about, these are parents who have done the Henry programme and have found it's had a positive impact on their own life, and they want to continue with that process of positive change for themselves, but they also want to engage other families. And so they organise community-based activities informally, locally, to keep the messages alive and encourage an active life. This group are parents in Leeds who had they felt too embarrassed to go to the gym, so they did their own Zumba group. We've had street play sessions, and volunteers lead cooking courses. This was an event to make aprons for children and their parents before the course started. We also have volunteer Healthy Start mentors who are providing structured one-to-one support, so not those informal community-based activities, but are delivering our one-to-one programme with parents. This is particularly effective in overcoming cultural and language barriers in local areas. And the early evidence, this project, which we've been running for over 3 years now, is being evaluated by the University of Hertfordshire. And what the evidence suggests is that the family outcomes achieved by volunteer-led support mirror those that are achieved when the programme is delivered by paid practitioners. So I'd like to close by sharing a local case study as an example of effective partnership and that really embedding a strategic approach to tackling child obesity locally. So Henry's been working with Leeds for over 7 years, originally with the Primary Care Trust, more recently with the Public Health Department in partnership with the CCGs. And over those 7 years, all health visitors and children's centre staff in the city have been Henry trained, that 2-day training, which is over 1,200 staff. And we're now training the childcare workforce, so childminders and day nursery staff. Within children's centres, local staff have been trained to deliver the family programme, the Healthy Families Group programme, and the one-to-one intervention. And we've got volunteer parent champions and Healthy Start mentors working in local communities. And these are what's happened to child obesity rates at age 5 in Leeds over that time. So the red line is the England average rate of obesity at age 5, which is held more or less static over this time. But we're seeing a statistically significant drop in Leeds from 10.3% 7 years ago to 8.5% in the latest year for which statistics are available. And even more encouragingly, if we're thinking about health inequalities, the drop in the most deprived areas of the city, which is where the Henry programme and support is focused, is more dramatic. It was up near 14% at the beginning, and it's now just under 10. So we're seeing a narrowing of the gap in obesity rates at age 5 in Leeds. So, in conclusion, what we have developed at Henry is a holistic and a multi-layered approach that brings together training and support for health and early years practitioners so that they have the skills and the confidence to create the conditions for change in the work that they do with parents. We work with families to support parenting efficacy and well-being so that they have the skills, the knowledge and confidence to get their children off to a healthy start. And we're building peer networks of support to create healthier communities. This is something perhaps just to reflect on at the end. If we're thinking about putting this kind of holistic approach into practice, what are the challenges and where are the opportunities? Feel free to tweet ideas on that. And I'll leave you with our contact details. We really welcome people getting in touch. And thank you for listening. I'm not quite sure when we're supposed to be finishing because we started late, but I suspect it's about now. So maybe rather than taking questions, it's now time to go and enjoy some lunch, not worry too much about what's on the plate. But there's a few of us from Henry around. There's a Henry stall outside. So if you do have questions, please come and grab us over the lunch period. Thank you.